weather week where people are talking about like the East Coast weather. We've got all these games on the East Coast. People are talking about Cincinnati, Cleveland, Chicago, New York, Eagles. Like all these could have like weather impacts, but we are not. You and I are not weathermen, so we do some different type of meteorology in the fantasy street.
Jump right into it. The first guy that we're going to chat about today is Trevor Lawrence. These Jacksonville wide receivers are a whole nother conversation, which we can get to shortly. But Trevor Lawrence, 6,500 against Indy in this one. Probably going to be some decent pace into this game as well. But let's talk about Trevor Lawrence specifically and his matchup to start.
Yeah, shame we lost, Anthony Richardson too. I mean, it was a tough week. You lose Anthony Richardson, Achane, and Justin Jefferson all in 1 week. It was really tough. Not a great week 5 on that front. But I think when you look at Lawrence, coming out of London, by far his best game of the season last Sunday, threw for 300 yards and a touchdown. The Jaguars had a pair of rushing scores in that game, or else it probably could have been a little bit better. But I think when you look at this in particular matchup, it just stands out. Trevor Lawrence has had 3 straight QB1 scoring weeks in this rivalry. In those 3 games, we know what Gus Bradley does, right? He's got this young secondary. He wants to sit back and cover 3. He wants to sit back and play zone, play pretty passive defense. These 3 matchups, Trevor Lawrence has completed 82% of his passes. 82%. Wow. 5 touchdowns, 1 interception. The Colts blitz 28 at the 28th rate in the NFL. They are 25th in terms of pressure rate, and they play man covers at the league's lowest rate. Just a complete, very passive, non-aggressive defense. They're allowing opposing passers to complete 68.5% of their passes. They're 25th in yards per pass attempt allowed. They're allowing 11.2 yards per completion. That's 21st in the NFL. So I think that we're looking at a situation here where Trevor Lawrence is coming off the best game of the season. He's due a little bit of touchdown regression. One of these games that don't have any weather issues. I like his price point. I like his where he fits in like the context of this slate. So I think this is going to be kind of him bouncing back and having his first multiple passing touchdown game since week 1.
Love it. There's been a lot of talk about Calvin Ridley this year. It's like everyone wanted to jump on the train after week 1. He had a couple down weeks, and then now we're back to, I guess, where we kind of thought he would be 6,700. Interesting price point for him as well. So let's talk through Calvin Ridley, fresh off an 8 target for 122-yard performance last week.
Yeah, and I mean, just fantasy gamers are just impatient. We've played 5 weeks of football, and he has 200-yard receiving games, and in another game he has a touchdown. It's not like this guy has been like dead to the world. We're just an impatient bunch. So it's been fine. But I think if we're talking about Trevor Lawrence to open the show, we're gonna need someone to pair him with, right? And Ridley definitely stands out in this particular matchup. The Colts secondary has been a weekly target for us. I was pretty surprised. Last week we came on and we recorded this earlier in the week, and I had DeAndre Hopkins in this slot, and you were kind of like, I don't know, and it ended up being kind of chalky. Like,
I know. By the time we got there, a lot of people made it there. So shout out to you, just moving lines, moving ownership.
I wished I had that kind of power, but it's not true. But obviously Ridley had the 8 for 101 and a touchdown in week 1 against this team. Every wide receiver 1 except for Zay Flowers finishes the wide receiver 7 or higher against the Colts. But it's in particular how the Colts defend that makes Ridley stand out. The Colts play cover 3 the most in the NFL, 61% of their snaps. Calvin Ridley leads the team with a 25.3% target share on his routes against cover 3. He's averaging 2.7 yards per route run when the Jaguars do see cover 3. So it's not just from a top-down perspective, look at what Ridley did against week 1 against them, look at what everyone has done against the Colts. That's from a wide receiver 1 perspective. It's also how he fits structurally when the Jaguars see the type of defense that Gus Bradley and the Colts want to throw at this offense.
Yeah, it's a really interesting. I think just like this dynamic of these wide receivers for them are just going to be something we're talking about pretty frequently across this entire season. So I think in general, if we wanted to build a prize pick around this game, it probably is Calvin Ridley, right? 56.5 receiving yards feels pretty low for him.
Yeah, I love that one a lot. I think he definitely flirts with triple digits. If you're on any other betting sites and want to do some alt lines and have some fun, I think he definitely flirts with that because we had Hopkins last week. We're just gonna keep picking on it until they set these lines higher.
Love it. Yeah, if you want to have some fun, make sure you use code Holka. There's a link in the description that'll bring you right to this. Get your free $100 deposit bonus over at PrizePicks. And let's keep this thing moving with another guy that's been pretty fun this year, Puka Nacua. And even with Cooper Kupp back last week, still seems like there's definitely going to be plenty of role and plenty of targets to go around for Puka, right?
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of people were looking for that kind of initial week reveal of what's going to happen to Puka when Cooper Kupp comes back. And I think it just stands out. Like, a lot of people are drawing like the corollary to like the old Kupp Robert Wood days. But I think it just fits that he's going to get a lot of targets. One, because he's been effective with the targets he's gotten. So the team obviously trusts him. Stafford clearly has rapport with him already. And this team's not very good at running the football. So we're going to get a lot of dropbacks most weeks with the Rams, and targets are going to go there. But you could play Cooper Kupp. I think what we saw from Cooper Kupp is great. Obviously, he's really expensive on both sides. And I think that also opens up kind of an advantage to play Nacua. He had 32% of the team targets. He still was the wide receiver rate at 11 targets last week. But what we really like in this particular matchup is that, again, we've got another one of these passive defenses. The Arizona Cardinals do not play man coverage. They do not blitz the quarterback. They do not put pressure on the quarterback. Last week, we saw something similar that we've seen from Nacua over the course of the season. He was targeted on 32% of his routes when the Eagles played zone coverage. He was just targeted on 18.8% of his routes against man coverage. For the season now, he's been targeted on 34.6% of his routes against zone coverage. Only Tyreek Hill has been targeted at a higher rate per target per route against zone coverage, as opposed to an 18.4% route against man coverage. That's where Cooper Kupp got targeted. Arizona, 25th in the NFL in rate of man coverage. I think it opens up an opportunity for Puka Nacua to stay hot. And then if people are going to go back and jam in Cooper Kupp, which, hey, do it. I think I have no pushback on anyone playing Cooper Kupp, but I think it opens up some value. I think it's a strong signal for Puka to continue his strong rookie season.
I'm curious your thoughts on, I guess, using that type of analysis. So man coverage, zone coverage, it does seem like something that a lot of really smart people are leaning into, and almost a little bit stickier than just looking at, hey, this defense is really strong against wide receivers, right? It's like, what types of wide receivers do well against these type of defenses that matters more. I guess, are we using this too much? Are we double counting things, or do you think it's actually something super valuable from a matchup perspective to take a deep dive into? Because I know you're doing a lot of this type of stuff with the worksheet.
Yeah, and it's been successful kind of looking at it just because, you think about like looks like a quarterback gets and, where they're comfortable, right? Like I've been using a lot of like blitz data too, or when quarterbacks are pressured,
Mm-hmm.
A lot of things like that. Fantasy data has a cool like first read target like tool that they have too on their site that you could check out. But yeah, just kind of getting a better understanding of like, all right, if a defense is going to do this, what are these offenses doing to counter those situations, right? And that's kind of where it's led to kind of some more sharper plays, like micro edges, right? Because everyone has a lot of this information. Like you're going to hear names on this show that, you're going to hear on other shows, but like we've lost like the top down edge because like there's so much data out there now. It's really kind of just trying to find like some very like thin edges to kind of help us, in some of these like larger field tournaments.
We've reached the micro edges portion of I think the ecosystem. So I love hearing that type of stuff, because sometimes, if anything, I can just like use it as a little bit of a tiebreaker as well if I'm deciding between a couple of different guys.
That's really what it is.
Yeah,
because like you said, you can get there. Like we can get down and say like, all right, listen, the Colts are this bad against wide receivers, right? Like, but all right, so like, what do the Colts do defensively that like maybe like plays into like what structurally the Jaguars do, right? And you say, all right, well, they're playing like this much cover 3. And when, Trevor Lawrence get these looks, like this is where he's going with the football, right? So like you kind of try to find a little bit more of like a step forward and just saying like, all right, well, how do I differentiate between playing Calvin Ridley versus Christian Kirk?
Of course. But yeah, I think that stuff's really good. I love when we're talking through those type of things. I think the people out there on this video love that stuff too. So let's talk about Raheem Mostert, who's going to be extremely popular this week for sure at 6,400, but for good reason, right? It's a pretty amazing spot for him in week 6.
Yeah, I mean, we never really talk about like the sites and like their pricing, but I mean, I got a hat tip, FanDuel, who usually gets dunked on in the industry. They've been very proactive with their pricing this season, and he's the second highest priced running back on FanDuel this week. Last week they had David Montgomery as their second highest. Like they've been like a lot sharper at moving things. The DraftKings, they're if you want to play,
it's more fun like that though, right? Like it was really not that much of a conversation last week if you were going to play Montgomery, but on FanDuel you like really had to think about it, right? So like I almost prefer that. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're in the similar boat this week with Mostert. I mean, we will see if Jeff Wilson ends up playing. He hasn't practiced yet at the time we were recording this video. They did open his 21-day window for him to return, but we still don't know if he's actually going to be back this week. If it ends up being just Mostert and Salvan Ahmed at the top of the depth chart, Ahmed only has 9 touches this season. In weeks 1 and 2, before Achane like topped off, Raheem Mostert, when he split the backfield with Ahmed, had 71% and 70.4% of the backfield touches. If we get anywhere near that type of touch count here as a massive home favorite against this Carolina defense, we are looking at just a really advantageous spot to take advantage. Carolina is allowing 5.2 yards per carry to opposing backfield. That's 29th NFL. They're giving up 22.4 rushing points for fantasy to opposing backfields, 31st in the NFL. And then when we talk about the Miami, run game, we're talking about explosives, right? We're talking about explosive runs. And Carolina has allowed a league high 44% of all carries against them to go for 5 or more yards. They've allowed 15.7% of all runs against them to go for 10 or more yards. That's 29th in the NFL. So they're giving up those explosives too, along with like all these game script and touchdowns to running back. So yeah, if we don't see Jeff Wilson, kind of fully back, and even if it's a 1 game back at Jeff Wilson, what is his workload going to be in week 1, right? I still think it gives a big run out for Raheem Mostert this week.
I love it. Let's talk about 2 wide receivers quickly before we jump into lineup building. We have DJ Moore and Drake London. Both these guys playing on teams without great quarterback play, even though I know Fields has been a little bit better. But DJ Moore in particular coming off of just an absolute explosion on Thursday Night Football. But sounds like you're willing to go back to the well this week in DFS.
Yeah, I really wanted to do Brandon Ayuk in this spot, but it looks like that's just like a big weather game, and I didn't want to have like everything be obsolete. So like we'll follow things. But DJ Moore, just a guy who's kind of underpriced again on DraftKings. He's 6,500. FanDuel made him 8K.
Interesting.
So like hat tip to the proactive approach. But do you remember when DJ Moore had 2 catches for 25 yards in the season opener?
I do remember the people panicking. Yes.
Everyone was freaking out. I mean, he now has either 100 yards or a touchdown in his last 4 games. Obviously, we're not going to get the eruption spot we got last Thursday where he had the 230 yards and 3 touchdowns. But no other Chicago wide receiver even caught a pass in that game. But he's got just another really good spot here against a Minnesota defense that's 22nd in points per game allowed to opposing wide receiver ones. And then also no team blitzes more than the Minnesota Vikings under Brian Flores. He's doing the same thing he always does. And when Justin Fields has been blitzed, he is targeting DJ Moore 28% of the time, and he's averaging 3.9 yards per route run when Justin Fields has been blitzed. He's been kind of his foxhole guy. So as long as this game too, like we don't run into any weather issues, he probably is underpriced over on DraftKings. Then just another guy to keep rolling with in your season-long lineups.
Love it. Let's touch on Drake London, 4,800 at home against Washington.
Yeah, Drake London, just another guy didn't get a target in week 1, or he had 1 target, he didn't have a catch in week 1, but since then he's had 23% of the team targets. Also, Atlanta quietly is throwing the ball a little bit more this season. They have 33 or more team dropbacks, 33 more dropbacks this season than they had at this point last year. So baby steps. A little bit forward. But this is more of, like you said, we're focusing on the matchup here. Washington has allowed a league high 20% of all completed passes against them to gain 20 or more yards. They've allowed a league high 6 receiving touchdowns to wide receivers and throws 20 or more yards downfield. They've been absolutely blasted by wide receiver ones. Obviously, we just talked about DJ Moore. That was against Washington last week. Our guy Arthur Juwan had 9 for 175 and 2 the week before that. Stephon Diggs 8 for 111. Now, is Drake London as good as those wide receivers in context of fantasy? No. But he's $4,800. Easy to fit him in this matchup in terms of a value play. This game actually isn't one of the games that is like the weather stuff going on. So I think when you look at his price, his opportunity, Atlanta's throwing a little bit more. I think it opens up for him to be kind of a value play. And if you got him in your season long stuff, I think he actually is elevated to more of like a wide receiver 2 status, where he typically has been like a wide receiver 3-ish type of guy.
Love it. Before we build a lineup, quick heads up. This year, all my final DFS picks and season-long content are 100% free. I'm going to be still updating them throughout the week, but the only place that you'll get those links is at my newsletter. It's called the Touchdown Press. There's a link in the description for that. Also spent the entire offseason building you guys a free course as well, which I'm calling the DFS Masterclass. So link in the description for that. Again, all of it is 100% free. So hopefully you guys can check it out. Reeves, are you ready to build a lineup? Let's keep this this video has been hot on even the lineup build, so let's keep this going. No pressure.
Yeah, no pressure. You know, I said anytime I give you a quarterback, we gotta build a lineup with the quarterback. So we'll do Lawrence and Ridley.
All right, so we got T-Law in there at 6,500. We got Ridley in there at 6,700. Anything else that we want to prioritize, I guess, from this list? Just to recap, outside of Ridley and Lawrence, we have Puka Nacua, Raheem Mostert, DJ Moore, and Drake London.
Yeah, let's do a couple more of our picks. We'll get Mostert in here at 6,400. Let's also play London then, because he's 48. He gives us a lot of salary to play with.
I like it.
I think we can fit DJ Moore in here too. We might as well play all the guys, right?
I think we can. I think we can definitely get DJ Moore in 6,500 there. It does depend on defense too, what we want to do here. Chicago defense 2,500 against Minnesota is kind of enticing without Justin Jefferson. I'm not sure what exactly is going to end up being chalk on the cheaper side of things. Maybe Houston against New Orleans. I could see Detroit against Tampa Bay at 2,700 being somewhat interesting. Anything pique your interest of those? Patriots. How expensive are they? Let's see.
26.
Okay, I could do that.
Against Jimmy G. Jimmy G is good for a couple.
Okay, fair enough. I don't know. He might just absolutely go off after last week and just give Devontae just 100 targets. We'll see.
Right. And then I think, actually, you know what? Let's do a little mini with London. We'll put Logan Thomas, who's going to end up being popular. I almost included him in the video, but I just didn't want to do a dusty tight end.
I said Jake brought him up too on the locks video because I do think he's gonna be popular. I just get so nervous every time that guy catches the ball, man. It's like, please don't get hit, please don't get hit. You know what I mean? His mind has to be just absolute mush at this point. I can't believe he's still playing football. So
it just looks like he's hurt after every reception.
Oh god, it's scary, man. A lot of talent though.
You remember that was like Julio Jones for years, and obviously Julio Jones. Remember every time Julio Jones caught the ball, you were just like, is this dude hurt now? Like,
every time, and then he'd still have another like 150 yards through the air. No touchdowns though. Running back 6,500. What do you think?
Let's do another mini here. So we'll put Puka in the flex.
Okay.
Our guy Puka. And then let's run him back with Amari Demercado. A little mini there.